My niece Megan called me on a Tuesday afternoon, her voice trembling like she was about to cry. "Aunt Dorothy, we desperately need your help. Mother has gotten so much worse, and Tyler and I have to fly to Denver for his father's surgery. We can't leave her alone." My sister-in-law Helen had been diagnosed with severe dementia 8 months ago, or so everyone believed. She wandered around her ranch house confused, forgot names, sometimes didn't recognize her own daughter. The doctors said it was progressing faster than expected. "Of course I'll come, sweetheart," I said without hesitation. Family takes care of family. The moment their rental car disappeared down that long, dusty driveway, Helen turned to look at me with eyes that were sharp, clear, and completely terrified. She grabbed my wrist so hard her nails dug into my skin. "Dorothy, thank God you're finally here. They're stealing everything I own, and they're planning to put me in a nursing home where I'll die." What she told me over the next hour made my blood turn to ice. "I'm so glad you're here with me today. Please stay until the very end of my story and write down what state you're watching from so I can see where my journey reaches." At 64 years old, I thought I'd seen the worst of what people could do to each other during my 30 years as a high school teacher. I was wrong. Helen was my late brother Robert's wife. He passed away 3 years ago from a heart attack, leaving her alone on their beautiful 200-acre ranch outside of Austin, Texas. The property had been in Robert's family for 4 generations, worth nearly $2 million now with all the development happening nearby. Megan was their only child, and after Robert died, she and her husband Tyler started visiting more often. At first I thought it was sweet, a daughter taking care of her widowed mother. Now I know better. When Megan called asking for help, something felt slightly off, but I pushed the feeling aside. "Helen needs constant supervision now," Megan had explained. "She wanders off, forgets to eat, sometimes doesn't know where she is. The home nurse comes twice a day to give her medications and check her vitals, but we need someone there around the clock." "How long will you be in Denver?" I asked. "Maybe 5 days. Tyler's father is having triple bypass surgery, and we want to be there for the recovery." Megan's voice cracked convincingly. "I hate leaving Mother like this, but we don't have a choice. I'll be there tomorrow morning," I promised. I should have asked more questions. I should have wondered why they didn't hire a professional caregiver if Helen's condition was so serious. But Megan was family, and family doesn't question family. That's what I believed then. I arrived at the ranch Wednesday morning with my small suitcase and a heart full of good intentions. The property was stunning. Rolling hills dotted with oak trees, a creek running through the back pasture, and the big stone farmhouse that Robert's grandfather had built in 1920. Megan met me at the door wearing what I now recognize as her practiced worried daughter expression. "Thank you so much for coming, Aunt Dorothy." She hugged me tight, but something about it felt performative, like she was acting in a play. "Mother's in the sunroom. She had a rough night, so she might be confused when you see her." Tyler appeared behind her, tall and handsome in that slick way I never quite trusted. "We really appreciate this, Dorothy." The nurse, Maria, comes at 8 in the morning and 5 in the afternoon. All of Mother's medications are labeled in the kitchen. She takes the blue pills for her memory, the white ones for anxiety, and the yellow ones help her sleep. They led me to the sunroom where Helen sat in a rocking chair, staring out the window at nothing. Her silver hair was neatly brushed, but her eyes looked vacant, empty. She didn't react when we entered. "Mother," Megan said loudly and slowly like she was talking to a child, "Aunt Dorothy is here to stay with you while Tyler and I are away. Remember Aunt Dorothy? Robert's sister?" Helen turned her head slowly, and for a moment I saw something flicker in her eyes, something that didn't match the blank expression on her face. Then it was gone. "Dorothy," she mumbled. "Robert's sister?" "Yes." Her voice was flat, emotionless. "See what I mean?" Megan whispered to me. "Some days are better than others, but lately it's been mostly bad days." She barely remembers who I am anymore. They left within the hour, hugging me goodbye and promising to call every evening to check in. As their car drove away, kicking up dust on the gravel road, I stood at the window watching until they disappeared. The house fell silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I turned to go check on Helen and nearly had a heart attack. She was standing right behind me, and her eyes were completely different now. sharp, focused, and filled with a fierce intelligence that hadn't been there moments ago. "They're gone?" she asked, her voice strong and clear. I stumbled backward, my hand flying to my chest. "Helen, you're talking normally." "I've been talking normally for 8 months," she said grimly. "I just couldn't let them know that." She grabbed my hand and led me to the kitchen, moving quickly for a woman who supposedly could barely remember her own name. "We don't have much time. Maria will be here in a few hours, and I have to tell you everything before then." I sat down hard in a kitchen chair, my mind spinning. "Helen, what is going on? What do you mean they can't know?" She poured us both glasses of water with steady hands, then sat across from me. The trembling, confused woman from the sunroom had vanished completely. "Dorothy, they've been drugging me. For 8 months, Megan and Tyler have been putting something in my food and drinks that makes me confused and disoriented. When it wears off enough for me to think clearly, I have to pretend I'm still affected so they don't increase the dose." My mouth fell open. "That's impossible. Why would your own daughter do that?" "Because of this ranch," Helen said, her voice hard with anger. "Because of Robert's life insurance. Because of my savings accounts. They're stealing everything, Dorothy, and they're using my supposed dementia to do it." She stood up and walked to the window, checking the driveway before continuing. "It started small. About 10 months ago, Megan started bringing me tea every afternoon when she visited. Special herbal tea, she called it. Said it would help me relax after losing Robert. I started feeling foggy, forgetting things. At first, I thought it was just grief and old age. But then the gaps in my memory got bigger, and I started having episodes where I couldn't remember where I was or who people were. Helen's hands were shaking now, but not from weakness, from rage. The doctors diagnosed me with rapid-onset dementia. They put me on medication that Megan insisted on administering herself, but the medication wasn't making me better, Dorothy. It was making me worse, because it wasn't real medication at all. "How do you know this?" I whispered, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Helen reached into a drawer and pulled out a small plastic bag containing several pills. 3 months ago, I managed to hide some of the pills instead of swallowing them. I had a moment of clarity, and something told me to save them. I mailed them to a private lab in Houston, using the return address of a neighbor down the road. The results came back last month. She handed me a folded piece of paper. I read it 3 times before the words made sense. The blue pills for memory contained a powerful sedative combined with something called scopolamine. The lab report said this combination would cause confusion, memory loss, and suggestibility. "Helen, this is a date-rape drug mixture. I know exactly what it is." She sat back down heavily. "They've been poisoning me to make everyone think I've lost my mind. And it's working perfectly." The scope of what she was describing made me feel physically ill. But why? What do they gain from this? "Everything," Helen said simply. She pulled out a manila folder from behind the refrigerator and spread its contents across the table. "Look at these." I stared at document after document, each one more damning than the last. A power of attorney signed with Helen's shaky signature, giving Megan complete control over her finances. Bank statements showing transfers totaling over $400,000 from Helen's savings accounts to an account in the Cayman Islands. A real estate listing for the ranch property, priced at $1.8 million, with Megan listed as the seller's representative. And the worst one, a commitment order for the Shady Pines Memory Care Facility, scheduled for Helen to be admitted in 2 weeks. They're selling my home, stealing my money, and planning to lock me away in a nursing home where no one will believe anything I say. Helen's voice broke for the first time. "And once I'm in there, Dorothy, I don't think I'll ever come out alive." I felt tears streaming down my face. "Robert would be devastated to see this happening to you. He trusted Megan completely. We all did. We all did," Helen repeated sadly. "That's what made it so easy for her. Who would suspect a loving daughter of drugging and robbing her own mother? I'm the crazy old woman with dementia. She's the devoted caregiver, sacrificing everything to take care of me. Whenever I try to tell anyone what's really happening, they pat my hand and tell Megan I'm having another episode. She's thought of everything." I grabbed Helen's hands across the table. "We have to go to the police right now. We'll show them the lab results, the documents, everything." "With what proof that they'll believe?" Helen asked gently. "The lab results are from a private facility, not a court-ordered test. The signatures on those documents look like my handwriting because Megan practiced forging them for months. I've watched her do it. And I'm a diagnosed dementia patient whose doctors have documented my declining mental state in detail. Her eyes filled with tears. Every time I've tried to tell someone the truth, whether it's Maria, the nurse, or Dr. Patterson, or even the mailman, Megan just shakes her head sadly and explains that Mother has these paranoid episodes. She says I accuse everyone of trying to hurt me, that it's a common symptom of my condition. The perfect trap, I realized with horror. Even if Helen told the truth, no one would believe her because Megan had spent months establishing that Helen's truth couldn't be trusted. There has to be something we can do. We're not completely helpless. Helen's expression changed, and I saw a glimmer of the sharp-minded woman I remembered from family gatherings, the one who completed the Sunday crossword in ink and beat everyone at Scrabble. I've been preparing for this moment for 3 months, ever since I figured out what they were doing. Preparing how? Do you remember my friend Barbara from the garden club, the retired attorney? I nodded. She lives in San Antonio now. Barbara came to visit me 2 months ago. Megan didn't think anything of it because Barbara always pretended to believe I was truly sick, but Barbara noticed things. She saw how Megan controlled every interaction, how the dose of my confusion seemed to vary depending on when I'd last had my medication. Helen smiled grimly. Barbara has been helping me document everything. She's connected with an elder abuse task force at the Texas Attorney General's office. They've been building a case. My jaw dropped. You've been working with investigators this whole time? For 2 months now. But they needed more evidence. They needed someone else to witness what Megan and Tyler are really like when they think no one is watching. Someone whose testimony would be credible. Helen looked at me intently. That's why I asked Megan to call you. She thinks you're here because she needed a babysitter for her crazy mother. But really, you're here because I needed a witness. The weight of what she was asking settled over me. You want me to pretend I don't know anything, to let them think I'm fooled like everyone else, and to help you gather evidence while they're away? Yes, and there's something else. Helen's voice dropped low. They're planning to move up the timeline. I overheard them talking last week. Tyler's father isn't really having surgery. They're going to Denver to meet with the buyers of this ranch and finalize the sale. When they come back, they're going to have me committed immediately. They don't want to wait 2 weeks anymore. My blood ran cold. How long do we have? 5 days. Maybe less if they finish their business early. Helen gripped my hands tighter. Dorothy, I know I'm asking a lot. These are dangerous people. They've already threatened me, though they were careful to do it when I was supposedly too drugged to remember or understand. But you're my only hope. I thought about Megan, the sweet little girl who used to call me Auntie Dot and beg me to push her on the swing. I thought about Tyler, who always seemed too charming, too smooth, too eager to please. And I thought about my brother Robert, who would have walked through fire for the woman sitting across from me. Tell me exactly what you need me to do. Over the next hour, Helen explained the plan. Barbara had arranged for a private investigator to install hidden cameras in several rooms of the house last month, disguised as smoke detectors and carbon monoxide alarms. They were motion-activated and stored footage to a secure cloud server. But the cameras were in the common areas, and Megan and Tyler were careful about what they said in front of them. We need them to confess, Helen said. We need them to explain their plan in their own words, on recording, where they can't claim it was taken out of context, and they won't do that unless they feel completely safe and in control. The nurse, Maria, is she part of this? No, she genuinely believes I have dementia. She's a good person who thinks she's helping me. Megan is very careful to time my doses, so I'm always at my most confused when Maria visits. She documents my declining condition in her medical notes, which just adds to the paper trail proving I'm incompetent. What about the medications? Can we switch them out? Too risky. If Megan notices any change in my behavior, she'll know something is wrong. I've learned to metabolize the drugs faster by eating certain foods and staying hydrated, which gives me windows of clarity. But I still have to take them and act affected. Helen's jaw tightened. The hardest part is pretending to be confused when Maria examines me, knowing that every note she writes is another nail in my coffin. Maria arrived at 5 o'clock that afternoon, a kind-faced woman in her 40s who clearly cared about her patient. I watched as she checked Helen's vital signs, asked simple questions that Helen answered in a halting, confused manner, and administered the evening medications. I wanted to scream the truth at her, but I knew it would only make things worse. "She's having a calm day," Maria told me as she packed up her supplies. "That's good. Sometimes the agitation can be really difficult to manage." I nodded and smiled, hating myself for the deception even though I knew it was necessary. "Is there anything I should watch for?" "Just the usual. If she gets upset or tries to leave the house, there's a sedative in the kitchen cabinet for emergencies." Megan showed me where it was. The idea of giving Helen yet another drug made my stomach turn, but I kept my expression neutral. Hopefully we won't need it. That night, after making sure we were in a room without cameras, Helen and I searched for evidence. We started in Megan's childhood bedroom, which she and Tyler used when they stayed at the ranch. Behind a loose board in the closet, we found a treasure trove of damning documents. Bank statements from the Cayman Islands account, showing deposits that matched the withdrawals from Helen's savings. A file of practice signatures where someone had traced Helen's handwriting hundreds of times, printouts from websites about drugs that cause confusion and memory loss, and most disturbing of all, a life insurance policy on Helen worth $500,000, with Megan listed as the sole beneficiary, taken out just 6 months ago. "They're not just going to lock me away," Helen said quietly, staring at the insurance policy. "Eventually, they're going to kill me and make it look natural. The drugs they're giving me are already straining my heart. It would be so easy for an elderly dementia patient to simply pass away in her sleep." I photographed everything with my phone, my hands shaking so badly I had to take several pictures to get clear ones. Then, we carefully put everything back exactly as we'd found it. Over the next 3 days, we continued gathering evidence while maintaining the appearance that nothing had changed. I played the role of the concerned but clueless aunt, calling Megan each evening with updates on Helen's condition. "She had a bit of a wandering episode today," I reported on Thursday night, describing an event we had completely fabricated. "I found her by the creek, but she came back to the house with me without any fuss." "Poor mother," Megan sighed with perfectly performed sadness. "The wandering is getting worse. Tyler and I have been discussing whether we need to move up the timeline for her care transition." "She means the nursing home," Helen whispered next to me, her expression dark. "They're getting impatient." On Friday evening, Megan called with news that changed everything. "Aunt Dorothy, we're coming home tomorrow instead of Monday. Tyler's father is recovering faster than expected, and we want to get back to Mother." She paused, and something in her tone made my skin crawl. "Besides, we have some important family matters to discuss when we arrive." Helen and I looked at each other with alarm. Tomorrow was too soon. We weren't ready, but we had no choice but to adapt. That night, we contacted Barbara, who immediately reached out to the investigators. "They're moving up the timeline," Barbara said over the phone. "We need to be prepared for them to make their move within hours of arriving. Can your people be ready?" "We'll have a team in position by tomorrow afternoon," Barbara assured her. "But Helen, you need to get them to confess on camera. The evidence we have is strong, but a recorded confession will make the case airtight." After we hung up, Helen looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Dorothy, tomorrow is going to be dangerous. Once Megan and Tyler realize what's happening, they might become desperate." "I've thought about that. But I made a promise to Robert when he died that I would always look after you. I intend to keep it." Megan and Tyler arrived at noon on Saturday, their smiles bright and their hugs warm. The performance was so convincing that for a moment I almost doubted everything Helen had told me. "How is Mother doing?" Megan asked, her eyes scanning the room. "About the same," I said, though she seemed a little more alert this morning. Tyler and Megan exchanged a quick glance that sent chills down my spine. "That's actually what we wanted to talk to you about," Tyler said, setting down his briefcase. "Why don't we all sit down in the living room?" What followed was a masterfully constructed conversation designed to manipulate me into becoming their accomplice. They explained that Helen's condition was deteriorating rapidly and that the doctors had recommended immediate placement in a memory care facility. They talked about the heartbreak of watching a loved one fade away, the guilt of not being able to provide adequate care at home, and the importance of family supporting each other through difficult times. They also mentioned that the ranch was becoming too much for them to maintain along with Helen's care, and that they were considering selling it to fund her treatment. The whole time, Helen sat in her chair, playing her role perfectly, occasionally mumbling confused responses to questions no one had asked. Then came the moment I'd been dreading. "Aunt Dorothy," Tyler said, leaning forward with an earnest expression, "we need to ask you something important. Some of the legal documents for mother's care require a witness signature. As family, you're the perfect choice." "What kind of documents?" I asked carefully. "Just standard stuff. Power of attorney confirmation, medical decision authorization." Tyler pulled papers from his briefcase. "And there's one regarding the property sale. We need to move quickly on that because we've had a very generous offer." I looked at the documents, recognizing the same signatures I'd photographed in their hidden file. These were designed to give Megan and Tyler complete control over Helen's entire life. If I signed them, I would be helping them steal everything Helen owned. "I don't know," I said slowly. "This seems like a lot of major decisions happening very fast. Maybe we should wait until we can discuss this more thoroughly." The temperature in the room dropped instantly. Tyler's friendly expression hardened, and Megan's mask slipped just enough for me to see the cold calculation underneath. "Aunt Dorothy," Megan said, her voice taking on an edge, "we've been dealing with Mother's illness for almost a year now. We've made all the hard decisions, handled all the stress, and frankly, we're exhausted. We're asking you to sign a few papers, not perform brain surgery. This is what's best for Mother." I looked over at Helen, who was staring blankly at the wall, and felt a surge of protectiveness. I just think, as her sister-in-law, I should have more time to understand what I'm agreeing to. Tyler stood up abruptly. "Let me be very clear, Dorothy. This is happening with or without your signature. We were hoping to keep this a family matter, but we can find other witnesses if necessary. However," he paused, and something dangerous flickered in his eyes, "it would be very unfortunate if you decided to make things difficult." Megan rose to stand beside her husband. "What Tyler means is that we've sacrificed a lot to take care of Mother. We've given up job opportunities, postponed having children, and spent countless hours managing her care. All we're asking is for the family to support us. But if someone were to interfere, to maybe suggest that we weren't acting in Mother's best interest," she let the threat hang in the air. "I'm sure you understand how that might affect family relationships going forward." I felt fear clawing at my chest, but I also felt something else. Anger. These people had drugged a helpless old woman, stolen her money, and were planning to lock her away to die. And now they were threatening me for hesitating to help them commit their crimes. "I need to use the restroom," I said, standing up. "When I come back, we can discuss this more calmly." As I walked down the hallway, I heard them whispering behind me. Megan's voice was sharp with irritation. "She's going to be a problem. We might need to adjust our plans to deal with her too." In the bathroom, I splashed water on my face and tried to steady my breathing. Through the vent, I could hear their conversation continuing in the living room, their voices carrying clearly. This is what Barbara had hoped for. This was the confession we needed. I pressed the button on my phone to start recording, capturing every word through the thin walls. "She knows something," Tyler was saying. "The way she looked at those documents, she recognized something. She's a retired teacher, not a detective," Megan scoffed. "She's just being difficult because she wants to feel important. We should have just forged her signature like we did with Mother's. Too risky. Dorothy might actually check if she signed something. The old bat is sharper than she looks." Their conversation continued, each word more damning than the last. They discussed the exact amounts they'd stolen, the drugs they'd been using, their plans for the life insurance money after Helen eventually passed away in the nursing home. They even laughed about how easy it had been to fool everyone. "The best part," Megan said with cruel amusement, "is that Mother has to sit there and listen to us talk about this. She thinks we don't know she has moments of clarity. But I've seen the way she looks at me sometimes when she thinks I'm not watching. She knows exactly what's happening, and there's nothing she can do about it. Isn't that even more delicious? Making her watch helplessly while we take everything?" I felt sick, but I kept recording. When I finally had enough, I returned to the living room. My hands were trembling, but not from fear anymore, from rage. "I've made my decision," I said quietly. "You're not getting my signature, because I know exactly what you've been doing to Helen. The silence that followed was deafening. Megan's face went pale, then flushed red with anger. Tyler's expression turned cold and calculating. "What exactly do you think you know?" he asked softly. "Everything. The drugs. The forged documents. The money you've stolen. The life insurance policy you're planning to collect on after you've murdered her." Megan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You've been talking to Mother during her confused episodes. Classic paranoid delusion. She's convinced you of her conspiracy theories. This is exactly why she needs professional care." I pulled out my phone and played back their conversation from moments ago. The color drained from both their faces as they heard themselves confessing to everything. "That's illegally obtained," Tyler said, his voice tight. "It won't hold up in court." "Maybe not," I replied, "but I'm guessing the cameras that Barbara had installed throughout this house last month will. And the evidence we've sent to the Texas Attorney General's office. And the lab results proving those pills you've been giving Helen are sedatives mixed with amnesia-inducing drugs." Megan's mask finally shattered completely. "You interfering old witch." She lunged toward me, but before she could reach me, Helen rose from her chair. Her transformation was remarkable. The hunched, confused woman straightened to her full height. The vacant look in her eyes was replaced by fierce, burning clarity. Megan froze mid-step. "Hello, daughter," Helen said, her voice strong and steady. "Surprised to see me lucid? I've been fighting off your poison for months, waiting for this moment." As if on cue, we heard car doors slamming outside. Tyler ran to the window and went white as a sheet. "There are police cars in the driveway, at least 4 of them. I'd like you to meet my friends from the Elder Abuse Task Force," Helen said calmly. "They've been very interested in your activities." The next hour was chaos. Officers streamed through the house, executing a search warrant. Megan and Tyler were handcuffed and read their rights while Helen and I gave our statements. Barbara arrived with a team of forensic accountants who immediately began cataloging the hidden documents and financial records. "The amount you've stolen totals over $460,000, one investigator told Megan as she sat in handcuffs. "Combined with the drug charges, the forgery, the fraud, and the conspiracy to commit murder, you're looking at 25 to life." Megan turned to look at her mother with pure hatred in her eyes. "You ruined everything. We were so close." Helen walked over and stood before her daughter, this stranger who had once been a baby in her arms. "Your father and I gave you everything: love, education, opportunities. And this is how you repay us? By trying to steal my home and end my life?" Megan spat at her feet. "You were always so proud of this stupid ranch, so obsessed with the family legacy. You never cared about what I wanted." Helen shook her head slowly. "I cared about you more than anything in this world. But the daughter I loved died a long time ago. I don't know who you are anymore." As they led Megan and Tyler away in separate police cars, Helen and I stood on the porch watching. The sun was setting over the ranch, painting the hills in shades of gold and orange. "It's over," I said, putting my arm around her. Helen leaned into me, and for the first time, I saw tears streaming down her face. "It's over," she repeated. "But Dorothy, I lost my daughter today. Even knowing what she did, even knowing she wanted me dead, part of me still remembers the little girl who used to pick wildflowers and bring them to me. I held her while she cried. This strong woman who had endured months of drugging and abuse, who had fought back with nothing but her wits and determination, finally allowing herself to grieve." In the weeks that followed, the full scope of Megan and Tyler's crimes came to light. They had been running similar schemes on elderly victims in 3 other states, targeting wealthy seniors with children who could be manipulated or who were already estranged. Helen wasn't their first victim, just their most ambitious target. The federal charges added years to their sentences. Helen got all her money back and full control of her ranch. The doctors confirmed that the cognitive issues she'd experienced were entirely drug-induced, and within a month of stopping the poisoned medications, she was completely back to her sharp-minded self. As for me, I spent a lot of time at the ranch that year, helping Helen recover and rebuild. We became closer than we'd ever been, united by the experience we'd survived together. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the stars come out over the Texas hills, Helen turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Dorothy, have you ever been to Ireland?" I blinked at the unexpected question. "No, I haven't. Why?" Robert and I always planned to go. We talked about tracing his family roots, visiting the places his great-grandparents came from. She smiled, and there was something youthful in her eyes despite everything she'd been through. I think it's time I finally took that trip. And I'd love it if you came with me. I thought about my empty apartment, my solitary retirement, the life I'd been living on autopilot since I stopped teaching. Helen was offering me an adventure, a friendship, a chance to really live. I'd love that very much. Now I'm curious about you, my friends who listen to my story. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted was hiding a terrible secret? Have you ever had to stand up to protect someone you loved, even when it was dangerous? Comment below and share your story with me. And in the meantime, I'm leaving 2 other stories on the screen that are favorites from this channel, and I promise they will surprise you. Thank you for watching until the end. Thank you for watching this video to the end. This story was written by me and narrated using an AI female voiceover.